Welcome back. I'm at a friend's house at the moment, and here's this beautiful library of magic books. And one of these books is the Encyclopedia of Playing Card Flourishes. Now, you're probably wondering what the heck this has to do with an interview with Franco Pascali. Well, I think this book sums up a lot of what makes Franco's magic so good and so unique. He perfectly blends flourishes and card magic and sleight of hand all together into one beautiful thing. And I won't introduce him too much because he already goes in depth on that in the video that you're about to watch. But all I want to say is that I really hope you enjoy this video. I had a super enjoyable time sitting down with him, talking to him about all these different deep topics in card magic, and I really hope you enjoy it as well. So I'll cut my blabbering out the way, and I hope you enjoy this conversation with Franco Pascali.
Well, let's start at the beginning because I've seen a lot of your stuff over the years, but I've never heard like how you kind of got into magic in the first place. So do you want to and also kind of introduce yourself to the viewers who might not have heard of you? But yeah,
Sure.
I'm just keen to hear how you got into magic and cardistry.
So, my name is Franco Pascali, and I love magic. Like you, hopefully, I really like it. It's my life, it's all I do, and I'm happy about that. And it's fun to create and chat with friends and perform and learn, and that is my joy in life, and I absolutely love it. I'll say that I got into magic very young because I was just had access to TV and Google at a very young age. And I grew up with my father playing cards every week with his friends. So I say that just to say that I think I fell in love with cards before even anything. Just a deck of cards. Just seeing
Wow.
somebody shuffle a deck of cards, I'm like, wow, I want to learn how to shuffle a deck of cards. I remember my hands being too small. I remember thinking my hands will never get bigger. You know what I mean? Even while I was learning these YouTube magic tutorials, whether it's Miss Mag or whatever other randomness was going on at the time. I just remember thinking to myself, like, oh my God, I can't imagine what it'll be like till my hands are bigger. So I just kind of, I grew up watching David Blaine. I really liked it. There was a local magic shop in Hollywood. So by the time I got into magic, I was just bugging my mom every 2 seconds, take me to the magic shop. That's like all I wanted to do. If she was running errands in the city, I would beg her. I'd be like, please, I'll go with you errands all day. Just like take me to the shop. And, so that was kind of my introduction. My dad and his friends were playing cards. My dad watched David Blaine as well. He would like call me into the room and be like, hey, watch this. I think you'll like it. And his friends
Oh,
knew a
awesome.
couple basic tricks. In fact, one of his friends, I remember, did like an impromptu coin matrix with little balled up pieces of tissue paper, and he would be able to
Dang.
do it, and he would show me. And I was like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing. And he had like a really charming, I guess, layman touch, we'll say. Like he'll do something where like he'll take the ball and he'll knock it on my head, and when he knocks it on my head, that's when the one appears under the one on the table. It was like a very
Oh, nice.
playful kind of thing. Anyways, what I will say is this, because a lot of people know me as a sleight of hand guy. I mean, Move Monkey, if we're talking about the early days of me posting on Instagram, that was kind of like just something that I was clearly interested in. When I would go to the magic shop, more times than not, I would be disappointed by the secret, by the method. As a kid, I would be like, wow, this sucks, or wow, I'm never gonna do that. And it didn't deter me away from magic, but it just like was interesting to me that I could be at a magic shop, feel the wonder of whatever was just demoed to me, and then I go home and I'm like, ah, I hate it, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the reasons I leaned more towards the organic and pure nature of playing cards. And the most I ever learned was never from a gimmick or a device. It was always just a technique and doing something. One of the first card tricks, excuse me, that I started doing regularly was the two card Monty. So there are stories of kids at second, third grade. They'll even tell you Franco was doing card tricks for us, and this is definitely one of the things I was doing. Okay. I had a
It's a good
borderless
choice.
deck. Yeah, yeah. So I just liked the method of that and the method of this things. Fast forward many years, I liked Magic my whole life, but there was a little chunk where I didn't do it quite as much, maybe 12, 13 years oldish. I wasn't like super, super, super heavy into it. I was skateboarding a lot. And I stumbled across the Paul Harris DVDs, the True Astonishment box set. And that happened to be good timing because somebody had just told my mom that you could audition to be in the junior program at the Magic Castle. Magic Castle, famous magic establishment in LA. I had never been to it my whole life because I knew you had to be 21. I don't think my mom knew you could bring kids during the brunches. So the first time I stepped foot in that building was to audition. It's also the first time I really got to
Wow.
meet other magicians that were doing that, right? So I remember the
How old were
first
you?
day. Yeah,
How old
tell
were
me.
you then?
I was 14.
Wow, 14.
14. Yeah. And I believe the program starts at 13. So could have been a little earlier, but no, no, no. It was great. It was great. I'm yapping a lot, but I'm just thinking origin story. I
No,
don't
no,
think
no.
about it
This is
too
good.
often,
This
but
is good.
yeah, that's the vibe. So fell in love with cars, man. I just loved it. I just loved it.
Awesome.
Shout out my friend Zach Davidson and Harrison Gelber. Harrison doesn't do much magic anymore, but they were my two pretty much first friends in the Magic Castle Junior program. Aki, shout out Aki. Aki is Shidogawa's student. I met him when I was very young. He's a little older than me, but he's still a young cat. And yeah.
Awesome, man. What was it like? Because, I mean, coming from New Zealand, we have literally zero magic opportunities, especially as a youngster. So I can imagine, like, once you got accepted into the junior program, it's kind of like exponential development from there. How did you find it?
Exponential is the right word. I would say the most important opportunity that was given to me, I think, in my early ages, in my younger years, was for sure Magic Castle related. But in the junior program, you audition to get in. And then once you get in, like the next goal is you audition to start performing close-up shows. And you perform close-up shows during brunch hours on the weekends. And we had a brunch booker for the junior program. And you got to do 6 close-up shows on a morning, right? So I'd wake up, get to the castle by 11:30, 12. From like 11:30 to 3:30, you would be doing 6 close-up shows or something like this. They're just bringing families in and kids and everything. And without that experience, I mean, I would not be where I am today because that's like right when you have that big bang of knowledge because you have access to the library and you have access to like-minded individuals your age. And in the junior program, every meeting, it was a workshop. That was kind of like the more valuable part of the program, which is
Wow.
just every meeting you go up, you talk to Bob Dorian was in charge at the time, RIP, but now it's Steve, who's amazing, Steve Barnes. So you would go to the head and you would be like, "Hey, I want to audition for brunch today," or "Hey, I'm working on this card piece. I want to try it in front of the room and whatnot." And then you do it in front of the room, and it's a bunch of kids, so you get a mix of terrible suggestions and amazing suggestions. But that whole factory really was life changing because now all of a sudden I had an audience of people and not just an audience of people at a close-up table, right? I fucking love a good table, right? A table, some cards, and I'm on top of the world. You know, that's all
Yeah.
somebody like me needs. So that's I think really where most of the help, or what I feel like was the more valuable part of that experience. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So have you ever done anything other than card magic? Or because it seems kind of like card magic is your like weapon of choice per se. Did
Yeah,
you start out with other stuff or?
so I started really with cards. Like that's always been my favorite. Like there wasn't really a time where I was like, oh, I think I'll start doing cards now. It's like, no, it just kind of always felt like that was the core of magic, for me at least, right? And then when it comes to other stuff, it's funny because I could probably name to you, 20 effects that require no skill. And it doesn't mean they're bad effects. I just mean in the physical sense, you and I could probably get in the room with a person who's never done magic ever, and they could get the gist of this mentalism piece if they have said device or said whatever. So when it comes to doing other stuff, I mean, I perform, I have clients and I'm in a commercial world a lot of the times. And in those situations, I'll do other pieces, right? If I'm in a bigger room, I'll do some other pieces. But the truth is, not to say that it's easier because it's not easy to perform in any situation. That's all about like working the room. That's very difficult to do, and I only hope to get better and better at it. But I never felt like devoting a ton of technical practice to something other than cards. Like I still do it,
I
of
hear.
course, but we're just the reason I just say I don't really is because it's like 90 to 10% or something like that, you know?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
when it's something else, I'm more of a showman. And if I'm doing a different piece, I'm more worried about just the experience and method wise. Found that the hardest things I do are card related, which is funny. You know, people will see, they'll see me do maybe a PK touch on stage, and they're like, "Oh my goodness," you know. But of everything, yeah. Does that kind of make sense? I think you feel me on
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. No, I 100% get you. I'm the exact same. I mean, there's still stuff outside of card magic that interests me, but there's something about sleight of hand. If I can do it with sleight of hand, why would I do it with a gimmick? You know, like that's kind of how I think about it. But I
100%. I'm
guess
the
there are
same
pros and
way.
cons.
Most of
Yeah,
the time, the only time I bend on those rules is, when things need to be filmed, we should be extra careful. And we
yeah,
should maybe
yeah, yeah.
bring out the grenades and the daggers and everything we got,
Oh
just
yeah,
to,
use everything at your disposal. Yeah, 100%.
yeah. But 100%, when it comes to method and magic, right? There is a truth that we don't have to face with people directly, but I feel it on the inside, which is if a method is hypothetically impressive, even on its own, I have a feeling that spectators could sense that, right? Now, ideally, we're trying to use all the psychological and verbal and technical subtleties so they're not worried about how it's done or not as much, and hopefully they're deeply fooled, and more importantly than that, invested in what you're doing and actually are paying attention. Those are the most important things. But I have this feeling where, like, you know, take like a Tamariz routine that has so much subtlety and maybe I don't want to say like too much, right? But like let's say you're doing an A-can with multiple decks. If somebody were to find out how that was done, I don't think they would be like, that's how it's done. Like it's kind of more like
Yeah,
interesting, so that means this. But if I'm doing, maybe an app trick, that might
yeah,
not be a very seductive method, right? So the
yeah.
the artist in me tries to consider that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think you're right. Like that kind of stuff does come across in some subtle way, but it's hard to quantify that.
It is.
You know, if you're comparing like I don't know the lazy man's card trick to complex any card in any number, like it's hard to tell just how that works. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons I love, especially the magic of like Tommy Wonder, is because his methods are just almost it's half the time they're more beautiful than the effect. You know, yeah, whether it's sleight of hand or gimmicks. Yeah, but I wonder how you balance that because obviously it's tempting as a magician to go down the road of doing tricks that have a seductive method.
Yeah.
But I've been caught in the past of doing tricks for the method's sake, really more than the actual effect's sake. Do you know what I mean? Like getting caught up
Yeah.
too much in the method. So how do you kind of balance that line?
Yeah. So first there's the kind of reality balance, which is when I'm performed to be there and I'm the performer and I'm the professional that day and I'm Mr. Magic, but I have a very specific agenda and people to please, I might not be taking so many risks. I might be throwing other pieces in there. I'm still absolutely trying to do the things I love. But because of what you're saying, where even the times where we focus too much on the method, I think you'll agree it's probably because that method is interesting us at that moment in our lives and we're trying to learn more about it. And if that's the case from an academic perspective, there's nothing wrong with that approach. So I say all of that to say when I'm performing in a non-professional environment, you don't know what Franco you're going to get that day. I could be out of my mind, I could be perfectly sane, but I try and use that opportunity to do whatever the hell I want and take more risks and do different stuff, right? So really just depends where I am and what the mode is. But
Yeah, that's a good way to do it. I guess it's cool that despite having magic as your full time job for a while now, or I assume it is, you still have time for the hobby side of it and for the academic exploration, and
yeah, you
it's, it's
got it.
it's easy to miss that.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's
Yeah,
important to keep you invested in it. I also
yeah,
try and like the more there's, the things we do because we love, and then there's the things that sometimes we do because it just plays good.
yeah,
And it's not I think we all do that even a little bit, some more than others. But I think the more time goes on, if we're really invested in like the study of it all and the pursuit of art, even in a time where you don't feel like an artist when you're strolling and there's 1,000 people, I'll tell you. I feel
yeah.
more like an assassin that's trying to crack heads, but sometimes that's fun too. Sometimes that's fun too, but it is a different thing. I was just saying that my appreciation for what the audience loves and what I love has been getting closer and closer and closer as the years go on. And that's been feeling nice, you know?
That's very interesting. What do you mean by that? Can you talk about that a bit more?
Absolutely, yeah. So naturally, there are times where, and this has happened to you and me and many of our friends, where, like you're saying, maybe we obsess with the method, right? And we want to try it because we just like it, okay? But after months of maybe trying it, we come to the realization that there's a better way to do it and a simpler way to do it, okay? And sometimes this is soul crushing. Sometimes I ask magicians much smarter than I that I'm blessed that they even speak to me. And I say, like, hey, can you tell me what you think about this? And then I'll be like, fuck, he just made it so much better and so much simpler and so much holy fuck. So there's an aspect of that where you don't want that to continue to happen, right? Because it's an
Yeah,
enlightening experience, but it is a bit soul crushing if we're thinking about something for a month and then you talk with
yeah,
the homie and your homie's like, wait, can't you just crosscode force that? And then you go, ah, fuck, you can, right? And you're like, that is better, right? You're like, damn it. So I think going through that more and more, you almost pre-factor that conversation in while creating. Just brings me to like a small creative note that I really think about. Always have a checkpoint where you go, what the hell is happening in this effect? Let's say we're studying one effect, right? You go, what's happening in this effect? What's the method? I always try and ask myself, is there an easy way to do this? Is there an easier way to do this? Right?
yeah,
Antonio, we were speaking of Antonio earlier. Him and
yeah,
I have jammed countless times, and I'll show him something and he'll go, yeah, but can't you just do this instead and it's better? And I'm like, I'm gonna murder you right now, right? And then
yeah.
he'll do the same, right? He'll show me something and I'll be like, wait, but can't we just do this? And although it can be frustrating, I think it's a very important filter to apply to your own work. So the more you do that, I kind of tend to find that what I want to do and what the audience like really likes or what I feel they're gonna like becomes similar, Because it is actually easier to come up with magic for magicians in a weird way. Like, not always, but there is a
Yeah, I
plane
know what you mean.
where you know how magicians are thinking, so sometimes it's useful to add 7 methods when you're trying to fool a magician. And it could be fun to add those 7 methods, right? But the takeaway might be maybe the selection procedure and losing procedure is now way longer. Maybe there's a little other thing we need them to do that might not be ideal. So I feel like because I'm doing card tricks anyways most of the time, I end up falling in love with the things that I want to do the most, that I see people respond to the most.
Mm, that's a good
I'm not,
balance.
yeah. Or I try to at least. I try to.
It's interesting as well because as much as I mean, I that was my entire what you just said was my entire experience of Blackpool this year was just showing friends stuff that I've been working on for months, and then they're saying, "Oh, but you should do it like this," and I was like, "Oh, it's just better in every way." But there's also a line there where sometimes you have to pursue things that others wouldn't pursue, which may be worse for a time, so that you can develop your own style, and
Hmm.
because we all have different, we're all willing to compromise on different
Yeah,
things.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's such an interesting point.
A lot of times the ender in a jam is somebody that goes, yeah, but I like it.
Yeah.
Because if somebody likes it, like I don't want to take that away from anybody. So like when somebody really looks at me and goes like, yeah, but I don't know, I just like it. Like I really like this. I kind of go like, that's
You
more
have to,
important. Because that's the more
yeah,
important thing. That's like if you like it, you should do it. In fact, maybe in some way, just the fact that you like it will make it better, you know?
mm,
And the things
yes,
that I'm
I resonate with that.
analyzing. So like maybe I'm analyzing things that maybe are wrong, maybe are not, but that's trumped by just them wanting to do it, right?
Yeah, actually, I was talking about this with Antonio when he was on in a jam, kind of almost the opposite of that, where you've got to kind of, if you really want to, and he was actually talking about it in context of like jamming with you,
Hmm.
where you kind of, you don't hold too tightly onto the ideas and are willing
Yeah,
to let them go if there's a better one or
yeah.
take someone else's suggestion instead, which is also important. But I guess like anything, there's a balance between the two.
Oh, we're so loose. Yeah, all the time when we're jamming, we're just like, he's even putting those in nice words. Like sometimes him and I are just like, bro, what are you talking about? Never tell that to me again, you know? Or like vice versa. We try and get to it. We try and get straight to it. Like, so
Yeah.
it's
Well,
important to have that thick
sorry.
skin. I think the best jams happen with the people that have the thickest skin and you're the closest to. At least in my opinion. Like, I like being able to say exactly what's on my mind with no filter whatsoever, just fucking brain to mouth to boom, and know that it's not going to be judged. And that
Yeah.
comes with victories and defeats in terms of like what the trick is and where you're trying to go. But yeah, I'm glad he brought that up. That's very accurate.
Yeah, well, that's the key to a productive jam session, right? Like, if you spend half the time trying to like say it in a nice way, then it's like, well, you could just go straight to the point and
100%. Yeah.
yeah, I get what you mean.
When I'm with friends, I say anything however I want, and I hope they do the same. When I'm around other people, I almost like will say nothing unless I'm asked. You know, if
Yeah.
nobody asks me, I just kind of spectate and yeah.
Well, I'm curious there's a phrase that I really love that I've heard Ben Earl say quite a lot, which is like talking about transcending the object. And as someone who does card magic primarily, how do you kind of make your card magic transcend the object, if that makes sense? Like, how do you make it more than just a card trick?
Yeah. Unbelievably profound question because I think the goal of any card magician is to transcend the object, right? So there's the element of the deck of cards being an extension of myself, which happens to just be a cold hard fact. So there's just the fact that yes, I have cards on me every single time, always, right? There's less than 5 days a year I will ever not have a deck of cards on me at any given moment. You know, it really is that lifestyle. So in that regard, there's the naturalness that oozes through whether I like it or not, just utter comfortability with the object, just entire comfort, you know. The other thing that I think I try to do is because I'm already narrowing it down to like a deck of cards, speaking generally here, but because like I'm already like you're taking all of magic and I'm like you, right? We go, yeah, card tricks, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
because of that, I try and find reasons to say yes to all genres and categories of card magic. Meaning I don't say no to the gambling routines. I like everything, right? There's not a plot I'm not willing to do, even to the point where I do cardistry, because I kind of start to think of it as there's magic and then there's the art of the possible, right? And with a deck of cards, a lot of things are possible, right? So I'm going to do the cardistry, I'm going to do the gambling routine, I'm going to do mentalism based card magic, I'm going to do hands off, I'm going to do all of it. You know what I mean? Because I want to show them the whole universe of card magic. I don't want to take them just to my side of that universe when I like the whole universe, right? There's so many things that could happen with cards. So I think in a way that could transcend the object when like they're immediately seeing the multi-use nature of it in a performance and it's
Yeah, that's
happening
super
so
important.
naturally it almost seems effortless, you know?
Yeah.
One thing I've
Uh,
noticed, yeah, go on.
no, you continue.
Yeah, I was gonna say when it comes to showing people cardistry, right? In and of itself, that transcends the object on the basis of just movement and
Yeah.
dexterity. It's a quantifiable skill, you know? And humans latch on to that, right? I mean, here's a very bad example. But if you're in like, you know, those restaurants where the teppanyaki, I think, where they like cook in front of you and they like do the
Mm.
flips of the thing and the onion volcano, like this is a bad analogy, but nobody really looks at that guy and goes, look at this guy showing off. That's not really your thought, right?
Yeah,
Your
yeah, yeah.
thought is, we're eating and now it's fun food time. Oh, look, he's doing all these things, right? But that quantifiable skill, I think humans connect to that, whether you're a street juggler or whether you are a dancer or whether you are whatever the hell it could be. I was talking with a Spidey once, and he was reminding me that mentalism is very difficult to quantify, or you can't really quantify how difficult it is, right? Somebody's on
Yeah,
stage, reads your mind. It's like a hypothetical, faith-based
yeah,
thing, right? But if you do this, you're going, oh shit, I can't do that, right? And even magic falls into this thing. Like, if you put a card on somebody's hand and it changes, that you could take down the world with that done well, we all know it, right? But it's you can't necessarily quantify like what has just happened, right? Now,
yeah.
naturally, because
That's the
it's
magic,
magic.
right?
Yeah, it's the
Yeah,
magic. Like you don't want them to think. But playing off both, I think, is really good. Because there are people out there that don't like I'm telling you, there are people that I think, not most, okay? But I think there are certain people that just resonate with cardistry more. And I'm talking like after seeing a show of magic, they'll just get fixated on the shuffles. And they'll be like, I would do anything to be able to mix like that. I could watch you shuffle all the time. And that person might be particularly sensible or sensitive to some fictional elements of magic. Some people like no bullshit whatsoever. Some people could smell like magicians think we're the flyest, slyest, sneakiest. Some people could look at you and go, "What the? There's no way." Or their whole time in their head, they're going, "Okay, let's go along with what Mr. Magic is saying." Right?
yeah, yeah,
So yeah. Also, I try and avoid presentations where they have to take my word for like huge pieces of information, or where they need to have like this faith and thing.
yeah,
It could be removed most of the time, you know.
yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you never
I'm
want the.
rambling. I had some. I'm
No,
feeling the
no,
caffeine in me, and the magic, but the card tricks, and then you place that, you do the card tricks. Sorry, I don't know.
exactly, man. This is what it is. This is just
Yeah,
really. This is just a big ramble session. So that's perfect. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I totally agree. I think as you know, as a card magician, we can't just be doing card tricks because the I mean we can, but
yeah.
the stereotype of the stereotype of a card trick is quite a negative one, which is a shame because card tricks are beautiful and amazing and intriguing and interesting and complex, and
Oh my god, totally.
so it's it's like my lifetime battle is trying to make it interesting. I can't remember who it was. One of the I think maybe it was with Antonio again. He was talking about the reason why card tricks kind of have that vibe about them is because you can't often borrow a deck of cards. As a result, it's always you introducing the object, and so therefore maybe there's a different feeling around it. But I
Yeah,
think what you said is a really nice way to get around that, where if the object is kind of an extension of you, then it's not. It's like just you introducing yourself rather than I've got my deck of cards. I pick a card kind of thing.
yeah.
Yeah, super interesting. Well, then let's go down to kind of the root of that. Why do you love card magic? Why have you decided to pursue that? We've talked about it a little
Yeah.
bit, but
Yeah. So there's a physically speaking, there's probably more you can do with a deck of cards than any other object in Magic. So we hear about this. But also growing up seeing cards, I grew up seeing David Blaine, and I just liked cards, man. It might even just be that simple. Now, luckily, there's so much card magic in the world and resources for card magic, so it's easy to fall in love with it when you're looking for knowledge and can find it, right? And you meet people that do the same. But yeah, the cards could just communicate so much because it goes down to this idea of like, if I have a coin in my hand and it vanishes, right? Coin and it's gone. Or no coin and now I have a coin, right? That could be amazing. A vanishing appearance, right? Fundamentals of magic use infinite different ways. But I guess what I'm getting at is if the spectator thinks the coin went in your sleeve, now the whole thing does not matter. Okay?
yeah,
Because they think the coin went in your sleeve. So now it's okay, much less impressive. If it appears and they think, oh, it came from his sleeve.
yeah,
Okay. I feel like in a weird way, cards have the ability to cancel out so many methods. You know what I mean? And that's really Because I believe I would rather do a smaller effect and them truly have no idea how I did it than a giant effect and them having a pretty good idea of how I did it or could have done it, right?
Yeah,
So I'm kind of that guy where it's like I'll do something small if I really think that they'll have no clue. And cards just let you do so much, you know? Cards let you do so much. I mean, another thing, magic in their hand is better than magic in your hand. I think we could all agree with this on some loose general scale, right? It depends what type of performer you are and what you're trying to do. But if we're just
yeah,
talking about we're gonna make a coin vanish, yeah, it'll probably be better in their hand, right? And if that's done well, cards allow you to not only do it in their hand, you can do it in multiple people's hands at once, right? It's like it's a
yeah,
complete straight to the point kind of object, you know?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're bang on. That's interesting because it's like I mean we're pretty similar in the same regard where we're both card magicians and but it's interesting hearing this quantified in such a different perspective. Well, not even really different, but just like in a unique way that I haven't heard before. This is the kind of stuff I really love.
Oh, I love, by the way, real quick, just while my brain's thinking,
Yeah,
I love the idea of like, I can do this now. Game time. It's like, hey, Franco's a magician. Oh, what does he do? I like he does some stuff on stage and but no. Do you have a deck of cards? Now,
yeah,
right? Give me a table, we'll go for hours, you know? And that
yeah,
is another thing that you don't get too often, you know? Some very artful mentalists know how to use a situation to their advantage, especially with things like phones and something as simple as a piece of paper and a pen and
mm,
what have you. But nothing is as immediate as playing cards, man. Like, if we're talking about give me a deck and we can go for hours, you know,
yeah,
again, there are guys that really succeed in this with other categories. This is just my way of saying, like, of course, it's easier to do it with this. And if
yeah.
you put a lot of work into it, it could be pretty sweet, you know?
Yeah, and it's also awesome how, like you say, you can just go for hours with one prop. Like, no need to really manage your pockets well when you have a deck of cards because you just take it out and now you've got a show or whatever you want.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah. I started, by the way, random things strolling. Oh no, go on.
no, 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 no. I want to hear the random thing.
Yeah, no, so for strolling, I have a couple other things on me, which I won't say, but mostly cards, okay? It is mostly cards. And I have, let's say, 4 decks on me. I'm really only using two, and the other two are if I need it because something happened or whatnot.
Yeah, so
For me, this is a cheat code, and it's the stupidest piece of advice that I could have found myself years ago. But I've only recently, I'm like, wait, what am I doing here? I start putting loose decks in the pocket with no box, and the pocket management is so much easier. Okay. So I have like my one deck with the box. If I need that box, we could use it for to put a card in there, to shift cards around, to do a card under box, or tail them to put the box in the pocket with the card. You can do all that. But all the other decks, I have loose just decks in the pocket because I like working with multiple decks. And I'll totally be here and be like, could you name a card? And here, you take this one and just pop this in your pocket. And then I'll just keep going. Like, I just like
yeah,
having different decks in play. I just like having different decks in play. And not having the box just makes pocket management easier.
yeah. Or a rubber band as well is another tip I got from a friend. It's
Cool.
like if you have just a deck of cards with a rubber band around it, everyone instantly knows it's a normal deck of cards because that's what they have it at home. It's just like
Oh, nice.
it's a nice little. I don't know. I love that kind of stuff. I'm
Yeah.
curious. Have you ever got pushback from clients or people for gigs? Because you mostly do card magic, or is that just not an issue because that's part of your brand?
Dude, of course. I mean, clients are crazy, man. Clients want all sorts of things. They don't know what they want till they see it. Most of the time, they don't know what they want till they see it. But
Yeah,
if they have a problem with cards, it's not like something that arises on the spot. Like when they see it, most people have no problem with it, you know. It's been so many years at this point. Like, you know, I think it's easy to do a strolling gig and have fun, even if there's a lot of people with cards right after years and years. But maybe there's times where that's happened. I'd have to think. But what I can remember is there are times where before you even show up, they're kind of like, we're looking for this style of thing. Like right now, mentalism is hot, and you'll have a lot of people asking for mentalism. You know what I mean? Or they'll be like, "Hey, can you do this, this, and that?" And normally, I mean, I don't have much of a problem with that, you know. Even when they've said that, like I'll at a gig not too long ago, they wanted very specific custom tailored stuff, mentalism style. So I did a full piece. I did 50% cards, 50% other stuff. Nobody had any problem. They loved it. They were over the moon. They booked me again. I'll be performing with them soon.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And I guess once, I mean, ultimately, I guess all they care about is they want their guests to have an awesome time,
Yeah,
usually, right, with these kind of things. So card magic can deliver that, and mentalism can deliver that. Yeah. Yeah, that's cool.
definitely.
Well, yeah, I guess one more question on this kind of same vein is what advice would you give to someone else who is kind of struggling to make card magic that kind of impactful, interesting, transcending the object kind of magic that you do?
The number one advice is you just perform. You perform a lot, and hanging around magician helps too because some effects, like you'll see somebody do it, and you're like, why does that hit better than when I do it? That's an important question to ask, because normally it's a very layered answer, right? Based on subtlety and who the person is and the timing. And it's one of those things where all of my best pieces live are the ones that I've done, hundreds of times, if not more. Those are the best ones because it forms in a way that's hard to like, really describe. So like you just have to perform a lot and practice a lot,
Yep.
but that there's no shortcuts. There's no real way, other
Yeah.
than be selective of who you learn from. So I think that's very important. Don't learn
Mm.
from people who you don't think you know, like no offense, but I never try and be disrespectful to anybody. But if somebody's talking to me about this and magic and this, that, and the other, and I'm thinking to myself, I wouldn't particularly love to see this person perform, I probably will dismiss a fair amount of what is said, which maybe is the shameful truth, but this is how I operate, right?
No, it's
Unless they
true.
have a
Yeah.
specific view because of something else, right? Like,
Well, I mean, magic is a performance art, right? It's designed to be done rather than just talked about.
yeah, 100%, 100%. So sometimes, yeah, it's like that. Be careful who you listen to, but the people you do choose to listen to, just ears open, just ears up. Yeah.
Who would be on that list for you? I remember in an interview with Jack Ty recently, we were talking about this, and he called it like the Mount Rushmore of magic for him. Who would be like on that Mount Rushmore for you? Who have you been most influenced by in magic?
So I'm a mutt, there's different, I feel like I'm a big hybrid of different thoughts. David Blaine has absolutely influenced me. Woody Aragon and Danny de Ortiz have absolutely influenced me. They were kind of my intro to the Spanish style, and they were my introduction to stop forces and psych forces and attitude as method.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's really big. I love Michael Weber. You know what I mean? He's somebody every time I get to talk with him, I just cherish the moments. He's nice enough to help me, listens to my crazy rants and whatnot sometimes. But he's somebody that I've particularly found to be just such an expert level communicator, both in conversation and in magic. And I'm like, he'll just say the perfect things in the simplest way. And when you hear it, you're just like, "Oh, that's so nice." And on top of that, the magic is so strong because he's just fucking great. Then you have like people like Helder, who I've been very influenced by Helder because since I was a teen, he was doing badass theatrical close-up stuff, right? Whether it was with him or with somebody else. And Helder is somebody that I think has a very specific approach to structuring methods. I think he's one of the best at it. But he's
mm,
almost so good at it that sometimes I can't see myself doing it. I just like I
yeah,
just appreciate it because I'm just
yeah.
like, holy cow. And I've seen him do shows and like he'll just fool you.
I
He'll
thought you
just
so
like
hard. Yeah,
really he'll just fool you, and you're like, God damn it, Helder, how are you doing this?
yeah,
So,
yeah,
seeing him just do awesome stuff, even in the magic market, like his book Reflections and Red Mirror, I love those, or the Ontology Project, all things I love. There's so many great magic. Aussie Wind, you know what I mean?
yep,
Aussie
yep.
Wind is just like no bullshit, just like effect is drugs, and he just like cracks your head with a thing, and you're just like, fuck, you're like, Aussie, damn it, you've done it again. I like all
Yeah.
these guys. If the more I think, the more I could think of names, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
when I started seeing Ricky Jay's work, which was much later, I was probably in my late teens when I really started to appreciate it. It's just the best, you know? He's like this
Yeah.
fucking mysterious, cool ass old man who says the right things and does the coolest stuff, you know?
Yeah. It's just beautiful, elegant, theatrical. Yeah.
But when I like
Yeah.
something, I think about it always forever. So I'm sure there's names I'm forgetting here, but
Yeah.
I love
I mean,
Pit
it's
Harlan, you know? I could just keep
oh,
talking
yeah.
and reasons why, right?
Yeah, and it's all. I mean, ultimately, like it's the kind of cliche of we're all standing on the shoulders of giants. There's so many little things that everyone contributes, and that's kind of why I started this series of getting people on, is because everyone is especially great. Like everyone has their own specialty. You know, they have their own. Like Pitt Hartling is just amazing at making
Yeah.
crazy dealing tricks super interesting and fooling.
That's true.
That's not like the only thing that he's good at, but that's something that's
No,
like
no, no.
he
Yeah.
just does so well. And it's everyone
Yeah.
has their own specialty, and it's so interesting to kind of break that down.
I'm just thinking now because there's so many people that genuinely inspire me, like so many, and I don't, it's hard to quantify one over the other. Darren Brown, and
Yeah,
let's not even mention
yeah,
Darren because I mean, there's so
yeah,
much to say about this guy, right?
yeah,
Just constantly choosing the most interesting mental effect for years, the whole world copying him, right? Just
yeah.
always the
Just
most interesting thing. He just gets to it, right?
yeah,
And that's amazing. Then there's like the spirit of magic, right? Tamariz, I'm so inspired by his spirit of magic. It's not always the technicals, although I use a lot of his subtleties and methods because holy shit, right?
yeah.
But
You have to.
just the air of like what he brings to how he is, how he handles people makes me feel good, you know.
Yeah,
There's like Daniel Garcia, another huge inspiration. Also just like beyond creative genius, he has a vibe, like a tangible energy that his friends could feel, the people around him could feel. And it's just so good, you know. He's also dropped a lot of nuggets of advice that I just always think about. Some of which too explicit to say because he has a funny way of relating it to my broken brain. But yeah, he gives amazing advice. Yeah.
that's awesome. That's sweet. Well, let's shift the conversation a little bit towards cardistry because that's kind of the point of difference that you have. And I remember actually the first time I heard about you was in an old video you did with Chris Ramsey, or like you were in a video with
Hmm.
Chris Ramsey
Yeah.
when he went to LA, I think, for a bit. I just rewatched it today because I was like, oh, I remember that. And that was kind of the first thing that like stood out to me as like a magician who actually uses cardistry in performance.
Mm.
Could you talk about like how you blend the two or how you look at the two, whether they're separate or
Yes.
together in your mind? Yeah.
So I might sound like a broken record to those who have heard me talk about this before, but let's take the basic thing of like I don't want them to think I'm doing anything with cards. I don't want them to think I'm skilled. I want them to think it's magic, right? And this thoughts similar to this have gone people away from cardistry, right? I don't want to do cardistry because it tracks from the point of magic. Okay? I don't or it seems like I'm showing off. So I basically just remove that statement from my head. I act like it doesn't even exist. Okay, I don't care what anybody says to me. And then I just change the statement to there's a time for cardistry and there's not a time for cardistry. So the whole thing just becomes is this a good time to implement cardistry or not? Right? An example in my work, what I have found to be a good time to implement cardistry, which some people might hate, but I do it at the beginning. And at the
Mm,
beginning of my close-up shows, I do a lot of cardistry. And yes, that lets them know that this guy could probably do anything with a deck of cards, right? Sure, it lets them know that. But it's also the most unbelievably authentic way to let them know that they're in good hands. When you go
mm,
see a magician, you don't know what you're going to get. You don't know how much he'll lie to you or not. You don't know how funny he'll be or not, how strong the effect will be or not. But when somebody sits with me at a table and I'm able to smoothly talk, even if it's for 45 seconds and do cardistry, I think they understand to a certain degree that this guy means business, right? Or to a certain
yeah, yeah,
degree,
yeah,
like, well, he's clearly dedicated some time to this. Maybe we should listen, you know?
yeah.
Another
That's a great point.
theme that when it comes to like showing off and like, oh, you're just showing off, you want people to like think you're cool, you can do all these things. Maybe that might come off that way to some people, right? Ah, look at this guy. But I don't think it really does too often. And I
Mm.
think most of that is less from what you do and more about how you act. So a lot of times in Magic, I'll kind of ask myself the questions because I'm like, I've always been known to be like a cool magician. Like, oh, Franco's cool. He doesn't fuck with that bullshit. He wants like the cool stuff, you know? It's like well, whatever that means, right? But for me, I do ask myself these questions like, is that cool? Like, how do I make this cooler? How do we make this more fly, right? How do I be more like James Bondy? So I'll ask myself all those questions, but then I'll really focus on doing it in a way that doesn't make me look like a douche, right?
Yeah, super important.
Just
Yeah,
I just go, okay, I'm gonna be the most James Bond badass motherfucker, but I'm not gonna be like, puh, huh, wasn't that cool? Like, I'm not gonna be like that. I'm just gonna like do it and laugh with people and have fun throughout it. And I think it's easier for people to connect that way. It's like the it's like the two worlds of like silliness and let's have fun and have a party, and then like expert level ninja assassin with cards, right?
yeah,
It's like when those meet, it's kind of my ballpark.
yeah. Oh man, it's so interesting to see the crossover between cardistry and gambling stuff because I've never thought about that before. But they're both skill demos, and they're both, like you say, kind of establishing yourself at the beginning as like, okay, this guy is worth watching.
The gamblers love cardistry. Oh my God.
Mm,
The people that like gambling routines love cardistry.
I can imagine.
And you
Yeah,
also
because
know
it's
how it
just.
is when, no, I was just
You
going to say,
agree.
when somebody gambles and likes that, they like the gambling stuff more. That's like their
Yeah,
shit. They go, oh, did you
exactly.
see what Kalen was doing? Like, that's so cool. They just,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
if you like it, you like it. That makes sense. I
yeah,
love the gambling world as well. I like everything cards. There's like, I don't think there's a card trick that I don't really like. Maybe there's many I don't do, but not for me not liking it.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I'm interested in this relationship between cardistry and magic because I remember talking quite a bit about this to Sprat, and I'm curious how you look at it because magic is a super old art form, right? Maybe going back to Egypt, as far as that. But cardistry is pretty much brand new, right? I mean, I guess Dan and Dave are like
As we know it,
some of the
cardistry as
forethought.
we know it. Before
Yeah,
that, it
yeah,
was in the
of course.
manipulation acts, and yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I mean, how do you? What are the kind of the upsides and the downsides of an art that's kind of just starting out? Because
To learning
really,
cardistry or not.
well, just like what is the upsides of doing cardistry, given that it's pretty much brand new in the scheme of history compared to magic.
Yeah, there is just a lot to explore. I think there really is. There's more and more. I never thought about like the upside to getting in so early, apart from the creative kind of crusade where you're like really trying to cover ground and come up with your ideas and your mechanics. And to a creative person, an open playing field is always a good place to
Yeah,
be in, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
for that alone, I think it makes it interesting. But as you say that, I can't help but feel slightly not saddened, but like, yeah, I do wish there was more resources and I wish there was more
yeah,
people doing it and I wish it was easier to learn. Yeah, it's hard. Like cardistry and magic is it's really yeah, if you want to create cardistry and do cardistry, I think that's two different things. Creating cardistry is like
yeah,
it's a trip. It's a trip. Yeah.
yeah. Well, how do you? I mean, how do you approach that? What is your process for creating cardistry?
So 90% of the process is what you're looking at. I have my tripod, my phone on, and I just start hitting things and making moves, and just trying to like go for anything. My style, a lot of people like my openers. So for any cardist watching, it's like, oh, Franco has good openers. I'll legit sit here and be like, it's like a weird way to grab, right? So now we're going like this, and then I go, but then can I get a single card there? A lot of it looks like gibberish, right? But you do that, I mean, I'm talking for 10 hours, and then maybe you'll be like, oh, wait, hold on. This was kind of, and then we went here. That was kind of cool. Okay, what? You're just holding cards weird and like trying to get to something, right? You're like, oh, anything, literally. So
Wow.
I'm totally a big I just play. I never have a preconceived notion of what I'm going to do. I rarely do. Sometimes halfway through the move, I start asking myself, where do I want it to go? What can it look like or whatever? Otherwise,
Mm.
I think it's the most playful thing you could imagine. Like literal sometimes if I'm have a block, a creative block, I'll go, let's come up with something stupid. Just what, like what just makes no sense. I think the other day I was like, okay, you could spread a card here and then you could spread it on this axis. Wow. It's like it's not sometimes it's that stupid, right? But little by little you get to a
Yeah.
place where you're like, oh wait, hold on, that was kind of or you're like, oh now this is here. You're like, what about just catching it? You're like, okay, what if it's all a bunch of what ifs, playfulness, blah blah blah. I just like having the phone here with the camera looking on me because I would rather look forward than look down because they will rarely have our POV. So there's
Yeah.
like this old thing in cardistry where sometimes if you don't use a mirror, your moves only look good from this angle, which isn't always true, but sometimes it's true.
Yeah, that's interesting. Huh. Well, then, one thing I've always been fascinated by, because I did get into cardistry for a bit. I'm definitely not a cardist, but I do love cardistry. But there's so many moves. Like, especially if you've created some, I assume you just have hundreds of moves. How do you, like, organize that in your head? How do you remember, what you've actually created or what you know?
Yeah. So like magic, a lot is forgotten and some is retained. And normally the ones that are retained are for a combination of personal taste and maybe even the mechanics are more organic and more natural feeling. So yeah, nowadays because I'm trying to perform cardistry more and more, I'm just finding so much value in the practical moves and so much value in the moves that could be done with a new deck or close to a new deck. The reason I say that is you've gone through the process in Magic where you analyze a move and you go, this move's deck specific. And that tells us there's a time to do this move, but if I have if I have one of these, maybe I can't do some moves because of the spreadability, right? Or if my deck's too
Yeah.
old, maybe I can't do X, Y, and Z. So that absolutely applies to cardistry. And I'm getting away from the moves that are too deck specific, which is a shame because you can capture lightning in a bottle on video. And on video, you can just show them this beautiful thing that just makes no sense because it makes no sense, and it's just wow. And I still like to do that, overachieve for that visual cardistry sense. But right now, my priorities is very much doability and practicality because, like, I want to be able to
Yeah.
do it. I hate that I can do a slight first try and some cardistry move takes me 10 tries. I hate that that's true. I just don't like that that's true. So I try and find, or more than 10. I said 10, by the way. That's sometimes 50, 100, 150, right?
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
really get the take you want.
Yeah.
So I try and think about that more now.
Yeah, what's interesting, it seems like cardistry is moving towards more of like a live performance space, at least in some aspects, which is super fascinating to me because it does have a weird relationship with video or a unique relationship with video where, it doesn't have to be practical for people to do it.
Yeah.
But I'm fascinated by a live performance aspect of cardistry, like at Cardistry Con or wherever it is, even just in public.
It's really fun.
Yeah,
One thing I'll
I'm interested to
say,
see where that goes.
yeah. One thing I'll say for the people looking to perform cardistry is like when you have a move you like, show them a few times. Sometimes in Magic that's contrary to what we're taught. Like normally we see things in Magic repeated in coin routines where the effect strengthens maybe by repetition and the methods keep changing, so the repetition makes it stronger. But in cardistry, like if you catch somebody like I love this move, right? So way to shoot a card over. Saw that, didn't catch it. Even further. Yeah. There we go.
Beautiful.
So I do that by the way if I don't catch it. Sometimes I'll be like even further, and then I'll put my hand further and like get anyways, it doesn't matter. Not what I was gonna say. What I was gonna say is, let's say I did catch it. Let's say I did catch it, and somebody was like, "Whoa, do that again." I will do it again. Let them see it. Let them see it. Boom. Maybe do it a third time while you're talking more. It seems like you're barely looking down, right? And then that really helps them see the mechanic because certain things like you can't really see what this looks like the first go through. Even something simple like
Yeah,
a Sybil, right?
yeah,
Even this, you can't really understand it the first time through, right? So you might want to
Yeah.
show them more than once.
Yeah, I guess you
Sybil
have to
might
see where it's
be,
going, right?
yeah. Maybe packet cuts aren't always the best example, but for things like this, right? Just the ability to continue to do this really lets them see kind of what's happening a bit better. Or this. I do this all the time while talking, you know? I say, look, here's the deal. You da 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 da, da," and I'm just doing bung 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 because sometimes them to see you so comfortable delivering lines while doing it, it's like an extra layer of professionalism and handling. It's like if I'm here like this, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're able to like be up here and just fully talking and interacting with people, I think that's interesting, you know?
Yeah. How do you want to be perceived by the people you're performing for? Like, because for a lot of magicians, you like want to kind of remove skill from the equation, where it doesn't seem like you really have a whole lot of skill. But obviously that's different with you, and I'm really fascinated by that because I've been thinking
Yeah.
about it a lot in regard to like gambling stuff recently. So how do you approach that?
How do I want them to feel?
Yeah. What do you want the impression of
I
you to
want
be?
impression of like me as a person.
Or just you
Hope
as a magician, I guess, more than
as a
because
magician, yeah.
I know you you want them to
Yeah, that's like the obvious
yeah,
stuff, right? Yeah, as a magician, I just want them to feel like when Franco's in the room, crazy things can and will happen. It's just kind of this vibe of like I'm a source of energy, right? It's just like I'm a magician, yeah, but it's just like when Franco starts doing stuff, just things start happening. Like just anything could happen, right? And I kind of like that. I think in terms of magical takeaway, I would like them to feel like they've seen something very rare. I want them to feel like they've gotten an insight into some hidden art. I know magic is not hidden, but in a way, a lot of magic is hidden from people because they don't see it the same way we do. So I want
yeah.
them to feel like, they've been enlightened through witnessing this ancient and hidden art, and the person doing it happens to things happen around him, right? Magic happens to us together, right? Sometimes it's like, oh, it's not even me. I don't know how that happened, but I'd have to think about that. I'll tell you why. I think that question just it can change so easily as an artist, right? Because we all have this like essence of a general thing we want them to feel. We want people to feel basic emotions like good. And we want people to feel, simple things like I want people to be more curious about the world. Yeah, all these things are true. But when it really gets to like encompassing the entire thing you want them to feel, sometimes I feel like it's so out of my hands, which is crazy, right? But I feel like I can only do so much because every human is a universe and they will perceive their world through their lens however they please. So I just kind of I want to give the audience the best fighting chance to feel wonder and mystery and
It's a really good way
sometimes
of putting it.
humor. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, outside of performing as a magician, what do you enjoy doing? Because I've only really seen the magic cardistry side, but you also make
Yeah.
music. I hear you're into skateboarding as well. Like, what else? Or maybe you were. I don't know. I asked
Yeah.
Antonio, and he said ask him about skateboarding. So
Skateboarding. Yeah. Well, I grew up skating,
yeah,
Still, I don't skate anymore. I have a
right.
skateboard that I might take to and from the parking lot. Like if I
Yeah,
have it in I might ride it for 2 seconds. I don't really skate anymore at all. But I love magic. I like making music because I kind of like a pretty wide range of music, sometimes very hip hoppy and street even and dark even. And it lets me get out these emotions that's harder to get out with magic. Be it like anger or be it like sexy Franco boy guy, or be it like whatever, right? Whatever these weird things are, like love lives, just like all fictional storylines rooted in some reality. I like to make music, and I have a lot of friends that make beats, and my brother's a musician. So the air of music is just incredible, and it just brings a different thing out of me. It just really does. It brings a different thing out of me. Apart from that, heavy magic, of course, we know this. But I love movies as well. I like watching movies. I like watching shows. I like
What kind of movies are you into?
I like them all. I just no, I shouldn't say I like them all. I don't like sad movies. I know that's such a basic answer, but I don't really like sad movies unless there's clearly thrilling or other elements or action elements, because a drama could be anything. But I particularly don't like sad movies that are too rooted in the human condition, because I'm just like, man, the world is already so beautiful but so flawed, and there's so much to be sad about in the world. So I don't want to see that in a movie, particularly, unless it's like
Yeah,
very
that makes sense.
masterful. Normally, I'm all about take me away, right? I want to throw on the movie. I want to be taken away, transported to a different place. And where I see a lot of connection with movies and magic, there's infinite, but like ones that I really like is just one of the hardest things about magic is getting people to care. You need to get, and that's what movies do. The best movies do. You get you're invested right away. How do you reel
Yeah,
people in? Right, it's a hard thing to do with magic. What's a hook? You'll find good hooks in movies. Might be a line a character says, or just a setup piece of information that was revealed earlier. Right. Then there's the other thing, which I think is a bit more obvious, but the feeling of a plot twist in a movie, just a plot
yeah,
twist. It's kind of like, how did we not see it? That's a very magic-y thing as well.
yeah. It
So in
is.
a direct sense, that could be related in many ways. And then the visual language is just cool. I'll be inspired just on a visual sense of how something was shot and get
Yeah,
ideas for
me too.
how I would shoot it or how it could look. Yeah.
Are you interested in like videography and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. You know,
Awesome.
I know my way around a camera. I'm not amazing, but I can do what I can do. I do think more about just the creative side of videography and like set design or just
Mm.
concept for a shoot. So I love
Yep,
that, you know?
yep.
Yeah,
And we need to talk more about that in the future.
for sure.
I
The
love that
visual
stuff.
language of magic, if we're talking about magic through a lens, there's so much room to change for all of us. And I think it makes it
Yeah.
exciting.
Well, that's one thing that I love about your stuff is you often start with like a picture that you want it to like. I remember in Vital, you have that image with the hand and the cards under each,
Yeah.
and like it's so fascinating to me to have an image be the inspiration for a routine. Like I don't know, it's so
Yeah.
unexplored. I don't think there's many people doing that.
We try it, we try. I think for Vital, I was like, there's so many times I'll just look over at Antonio's FaceTime and there's just like some ridiculous thing going on. But I think I just had a card under my finger. I think I was just doing this. And I was
Yeah,
like, what does this mean? In my head, I had no idea what I literally from nothing, just fucking, okay, this is kind of funny on the table. So maybe you just like it's like a way of selecting a card. Like they just lift up one finger when I touch your hand, and maybe they can do this. So first, I was thinking if some fingers are harder to lift up, maybe that's not a good way to select, or maybe that's what you need to limit the choice. But
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah,
that first spark just gets you going. It sends you on a journey. Just that one, it could be anything. Could be anything.
yeah, yeah. So how does I'm curious about because I mean I'm of the opinion that if you master anything, you master everything. Where if you are really good at one area, like card magic, for example, that it will seep into every other aspect of your life. You'll see the crossover, and
Yeah.
I'm curious how that's happened with music or vice versa. How has music influenced the way you do magic?
Yeah. So I would say the most powerful thought that I've gone through in my life, and I think a lot of magicians go through in terms of practice, is this idea that I remember sitting and looking at a move and being like, I'll never be able to do this. And my brain is telling me I will never be able to do this. What happens? I do it and I get really good at it. And then it happens again. I'll never be able to do this. Then I learn it and I get really good at it, right? As I started doing this in magic when I was younger, I also had these thoughts about creativity. Like, I don't know how to create. How will I ever create anything? Like, I know how to perform to people. Maybe I can think of a thing to say, but what do you mean create, right?
Mm.
Then,
Yep.
as a young teen, open up to this world, you start to realize, well, a lack of knowledge, first of all, is going to make it harder to create. So you start getting all this knowledge and you start to really think about it and you start to doing it more and more. And then all of a sudden you have a small idea. That idea could be as small as, what if when we do this, we put it back here, right? And then you're like, right, you're like,
Yeah, yeah.
oh, that's crazy, right? And in magic, you'll have these thoughts, but I say that to symbolically show that I told myself something was impossible and then proved myself wrong. So if your brain has gone through that process, it doesn't matter if it's music, this, that, or the other. You understand that with care and love and work ethic, you will improve in whatever it is you may be, right? I might never be as good as something else as I am with cards. Maybe it is absolutely true that this is my soul bond, right? This might be the number one, but just in terms of improvement and experiencing and immersing yourself in other arts, I think that's taught me a lot. Just like things I told myself I'd never be able to do, and then you can do it. Could be
Yeah.
as small as learning raise rise. Like, how am I going to learn raise rise? It's impossible. Can't be done. No way. I'm not that guy, right? And then you're that guy. So it's
Yeah.
yeah.
That's a really good crossover. Okay, well, let's shift. One of the things one of the first things I thought about when I wanted to get you on was your creative process because I've read Vital. I really love it, and one of the reasons I love it is because it's such a mix of like old plots with modern methods and presentations, but there's also like stuff that's just entirely new, like this, like. So, how do you approach creating magic? And especially, I especially love the idea of like conceptual magic. How do you kind of approach creating conceptual magic?
It's a really good question. All these questions are great. I'll try and answer because it's hard, It's like how do you approach it? It's a hard
Yeah.
question to answer, but I think one thing that has well, first of all, I love to work in group. Like I like to work with people. I like to chat. Even if sometimes even just I'll be on Discord, like with some homies, some cardists. I might not even be talking about magic with them, but I like the little chit chat, right? So
Yeah.
sometimes I like that. I could lean over to somebody and be like, blah, blah, blah. But the truth is, a lot of it is alone and cold and sad. No, no. So what happens is when I'm thinking about magic, like even a night where I'm just on this couch and I'm like, what am I gonna think about, right? So sometimes people will go, you need to start magic with what you're trying to say. You hear this. You say you got to figure out what you're trying to say. What's the thing? What's the whole point? And then you come up with the magic, right? Or what happened here? We had some technical difficulties, right? We're doing the podcast
Technical
from scratch.
difficulties.
All
Yeah,
right, let's start from the beginning.
let's start from the beginning. So, Franco, how did you get started?
Yes. Well, it's funny you say that. I actually invented every magic trick you now know and love.
Wow. Yeah, it's a great guest for the podcast then. Let's talk about it. No. Well,
No, we're talking about the creative
creative
process.
process. Yeah.
So I'm sure we can edit it together, but it's the question, what is the creative process like? So hard to answer. No, what I realize is a lot of people will talk about the best way to create an amazing piece of magic is you think about the message, what you're trying to say with this piece, then figure out the rest later. And I look at that and I go, that's a good idea. And then other people say, you think of the end of the trick and then you work backwards from the end of the trick. And I look at that and I go, that's a good idea. Sometimes people go, I had a friend, Colin Cloud once said, this might be funny, but sometimes I think of the clickbait title of my magic routine as a concept, just like, is that clickbait title something somebody would click on? Because sometimes that means that it's a pretty strong or heavily relatable effect. And I look at that and I go, oh, that's smart. I
Yeah.
like sometimes starting with the beginning where I have no idea what's going to happen. I just worry about building curiosity. How do we make them curious? How do we make them intrigued? How do we hook them in? And that's based on the beginning. Sometimes a joke will spawn an entire magic trick, right? Sometimes a method. Sometimes I'll be like, wow, what a phenomenal use of miscall in this context. How could we use this miscall in a weirder way? Right? And I'll think about that. Sometimes I'll be like, okay, doing a card trick, what are the most amount of peripheral things I can add to make this interesting? Maybe the whole time I'm wearing sunglasses, and at the end, when I tell them to put it on, they're completely blacked out. They're like, holy shit, he was doing this blind the whole time, right? So it's
Yeah.
just anything peripheral, right? So I say all these things because the creative process, I believe, could start from any one of these points.
Hmm.
And it's important to just remember that and try them all, you know? So sometimes I'm starting from the end, sometimes from the beginning, sometimes with a funny line, sometimes, I don't know, maybe sometimes I'll be like, oh, what if it's funny if I just start like this and I'm sitting and I'm doing cardistry and then this hand comes here. And now they're like, ha, I didn't think it could be anything, right? So that's just my way of saying like the creative process, I'm just trying to look for any jumping off point, any jumping off point, something that just gets you going. And of course, it's much more focused if it's for a specific task. If I'm creating for camera, that might be very, very different process. If I'm creating for or helping somebody else, might be a different process or whatnot. But I think you just got to let yourself be completely open to travel to every part of the magic universe. Start from the middle of the trick, start from the end, start with a line, start with the way you're standing, a thing you say, a peripheral object, a joke. All these could be good ways to start. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you use that same approach when you're creating cardistry moves? Or is it entirely different?
It's you know,
Fiddling and experimenting and
there's not as much. I know the cardists are gonna just murder me for this, but like, I don't think cardistry is as intellectual as magic on the creative end, but there's still a lot to consider. I just mean like with magic, I can quite literally bring other objects to help me in what I'm doing, right? Or with magic, I can bring a human's thoughts and use those thoughts against them to my advantage for whatever. So in a certain sense, you're limited with what you can do with cardistry, but it's still unbelievably intellectual in the mechanical sense, in the theoretical sense as well. So with cardistry, I'm just an explorer. I'll just sit with cards for 10 hours, constantly trying new things, camera in front of me, and I just save progress. Sometimes I'll do it for a whole night and I'll come up with an opener. Sometimes I'll come up with a closer. Sometimes neither of those, just a concept like, oh, what if a card bends while it's over here and touches that, or anything. So I guess in that regard, I've had moves in cardistry that have started with the middle, started with the end, started with the beginning. But I do play with the cards a lot because there's this thing in cardistry which is amazing, which I'm not even too good at myself, which is visualizing the move before you do it.
is this
I
like
don't do
before
that.
you create it or before you perform it?
Yeah, before you create it, like kind of trying to imagine some people do this, right? Or maybe based on another visual they see, they have an altered version of that visual in their head they want to put to motion. I have not done that so much. Sometimes that happens naturally in the middle of the cardistry creating process, but I try to be super rooted in what my hands could do. So because of that, I think the best way to create cardistry is just move your hands free, no barriers, no walls, just open playground. Don't worry if it's terrible. Just do weird stuff and then something will click.
Awesome. Okay, well, give me a second. I'm just going to try to get this camera back up and running.
Boom.
We're
It's
back.
like nothing ever happened. We're back.
We're back.
Back even better than before. Okay. Well, okay, this is a little bird told me that you have some pretty interesting stories about people you've performed for and gigs that you've done. Could you shed some light on how you ended up performing for Mr. Beast and his team?
My God, that's a good question. So I met Mr. Beast's team with Chris Ramsey. Chris Ramsey being in the YouTube space, met Jimmy,
Mm-hmm.
and he invited me over to do a video with them. It was
Awesome.
with Alex Boyer and Chris and them. And Mr. Beast's team was just really chill, you know? I didn't talk with Mr. Beast so much. He's in go mode when it's video time. He's a very nice guy, by the way. But you can tell he's got a
Yeah.
trillion things to do. He's really focused on the goal.
Yeah.
So naturally, I got to hang out with some of his team.
Mm.
You know, I think at the time it was like Garrett and Chandler and I'm forgetting some names. Uh, Viking gentleman who's very nice. Jake the Viking, I think, is that his name? So some of these
I'm not
guys,
sure.
and what happened is Garrett Nico Nienko, I think that's how you say his last name. Garrett's awesome, and he was in LA not too long ago. I still see him sometimes. Garrett, he doesn't work for Mr. Beast anymore, but we went to go see a comedy show a couple times when he was in town, and I get a call one night, and they're like, "Hey, do you want to come to the Phase House?" I think it was the Phase House at the time, and do magic for this thing we're doing. I said yes immediately, you know? I'm like, "Can I bring a friend?" They're like, "Yeah." So I just got lucky that they called me up to do magic in the last to leave the circle video.
Wow.
Yeah, this was years ago. So there was
Is that
also a,
actually in? Is that in the video?
yeah, I just pull up at some point and I do like a couple effects, yeah. And it was kind of cool. Yeah, you should check it out. You should check it out. There's somebody leaves the circle as a reaction. Like something happens and he's like, I'm done, and he just fucking leaves.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's that story, just I got connected, I got lucky, and his team was always very nice and welcoming, so that just happened to line up. Yeah, it was pretty fun.
Have you had any other? Are there any other cool gig stories that you've had over the years, or people
I'm
you've
trying to
performed for that are
think,
cool?
trying to think.
Because I can
There's,
imagine working with Theory 11, they have some
oh yeah,
contacts.
yeah, yeah. So Theory 11, those guys are awesome. So Jonathan, CO extraordinaire. That guy's I don't know how that guy does half the stuff he does. This dude understands what he's doing. And his brother Ari Baim, who helps negotiate some contracts, and he's a lawyer, and he's also a very awesome guy. They get me some gigs at times, and they're always great, because Theory's done it so much. So if I need a close-up table, they'll send the details, and everything's beautiful and crisp. I'm trying to think in that world. Well, there was a time where this is just more interesting story, but I had a gig in Mumbai years ago, and it was like 4 days before. So they were hitting me up like, "Yo, we're not gonna just send you here randomly 4 days in advance, but like, why don't you find a friend and we'll fly both of you first class, or the client will fly both of you first class, and if you do that, we can." I'm like, "Hell yeah!" So I called my friend Aaron, and we got the gig, and we went all the way over there. It's funny, you travel halfway across the world, you do an hour of strolling, and that's like kind of it. So like we went, it was a giant, I want to say Sweet 16 party on the rooftop of this building in Mumbai. They had the dancers, they had the fire, they had the jugglers, they had everything. There was a lot of people. And
Wow.
the father of the girl whose birthday it was, he was like so ready to just have me sit with his friends and fuck around. Like he got me all the way over there. He's like, "Oh, maybe go show the kids some stuff, and yeah, just come back when you're done." So I go and I did magic for like an hour, and then I sit at the table with him, and he starts ordering shots. And he was just frustrated if I don't drink them. He really wanted me to drink with him. So he's like, "For you and your friend, come on, come on, come on, come on." So he's just ordering shots. He's like, "Show me card tricks, show me card tricks." And I was just showing him card tricks with this guy and his friends. They were making me drunk. They were having a good time. Like it's an interesting world. Yeah, I was legit there. He was just over the moon for me to just show him and his friends card tricks. Like I don't know if they were card
Wow.
players or what, but it's fun. You travel halfway across the world to Mumbai, and it's the most seamless, easy, fun thing. And then there are other times where you do a party in LA. They're like, "What do you need?" You're like, "I don't need anything. Only a table we can sit around." And then you come and they don't even have a table you could sit around, right? So it's
Yeah.
like it's both. It's both.
Man,
Yeah.
that's bonkers.
I've gotten to consult on some movies, and I can't say what, or I really shouldn't say anything, but I've consulted on two Disney films so far. Both of those are out. Magic Camp a
Hmm.
while ago, and The Descendants: Rise of Red, which came out, I think, last year recently. And I connected
Mm.
Anna de Guzman for that film because I needed some female hand doubling and technical stuff. So
Awesome.
that was cool. But the new one that I helped an actor learn some stuff, for sure the coolest one I've ever done. So I can't say what, but we'll see. And
Wow.
I still try not to think about it because I almost can't believe it happened. And a
Yep.
lot of times you're fully unsure what is going to make it into the movie. So for all I know, there will be no cards or very little cards, but there's a chance it'll be pretty crazy. So I hope, I
Man,
hope.
that's sick.
But we'll see in, 6 months or so.
Oh, is that the ETA? 6 months? Sweet.
Something like this, yeah. Yeah.
Man, I guess that's the perks of like, especially, I imagine like living in LA has that kind of advantage where, there's a lot of stuff going on in that kind of area with movies, etc.
Yeah.
That's super cool. Oh, nice. Well, let's move towards actually some of your stuff. You've got a brand, Cardilago.
Yes.
It's
Cardilago
yeah.
dot.
There we go. Shameless plug. I mean, it's an awesome brand. But I'm really curious. been some of your biggest challenges and also like biggest rewards of creating a
Yeah.
brand and like a physical product?
Yeah, it's very hard to do all of it, you know. I've had some issues with people I've partnered up, you know, that I hate to talk about. You know, there's always problems with things like that. Things sometimes it takes years to solve these things. You know what I mean? So there's definitely been some hardships on that regard, but it's just I never try and push it like I never wanted to just put a lot of money into this thing and just kind of see if it works or not. I've always been just almost in a naive way. I think to myself, well, I play with cards all the time. I'm pretty good with cards, so I hope people like my brand because they just believe in what I'm doing, you know, and I just really like the card art. So I kind of believe this is the main goal for me. So I just try and slowly grow that and do my thing and get people interested. And yeah, I still want to make cards. I have a new ebook on there. We should talk about that too. Get my
Yeah,
new
let's talk
ebook.
about that, man. Yeah,
Where's the
Mystic
camera? I'm
Paper.
looking at you. Mystic Paper.
Yep.
You do card magic? Get it. Get it.
Do you wanna plug some of the stuff that's in there, or like I know
Yeah,
you try to keep it on the DL.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So Mystic Paper is 5 card routines. Okay. 5 card routines. And they're all pretty unique in form because piggybacking off of what you said with Vital, like a lot of the stuff feels like familiar yet new, and some of it feels like completely new, right? So I think in this book, there are styles of effects in there that you're very familiar with, but the way of getting there is so unique, and I'm really proud of them, you know? The first routine is essentially this is what it looks like. Okay, this is what the first routine looks like. I say, we don't need the Joker, but name any suit. What suit?
Spades.
Are you sure? Because we need to add together some spades. You don't want diamonds, hearts, clubs,
Let's go spades.
spades. And we need a couple spades. Not too many, but what do you think? 2 spades, 3 cards that are spades, four
Let's go
cards,
three.
that are- 3 cards that are spades. Okay. So we're just going to look for 3 spades. That's one. Let's see. There you go. Boom. 3 spades. But and then you show them. You really could have said hearts. You could have said clubs, diamonds, blah blah blah. And now these are added together to reveal that we have 25. And I said we didn't need the Joker because on the back of it is 25, right?
Wow.
That's one of the tools. And of course I explain a routine with I'm not presenting it in any way, shape, or form, just
No, no, no.
giving you
Of
the
course,
rough idea here.
that's just
And
the
there's
idea.
ways
Yeah.
to force numbers this way. Now, there's ways to force numbers this way. And it's really nice because you can show people. It's not like they're going to look here and be like, oh, wait, but if I got the spades, it was also going to be the same thing. Like, no, it's just clean like this. So that opens up some doors. The first piece. Then there's a piece called Pocket Picker, which I think is really fun. It's inspired by Chan Canasta, but it's got a little bit of Franco spice in there. So the stack worker may enjoy this because it takes an interesting approach. I really like this. There's an effect called blueprinting, which is again, I think the form of that one is most interesting, where if you were to see somebody do that routine without hearing them, you would be pretty interested as to what's going on. Just based on like, you'd be like, I wonder what this even like. It's not obvious as to where it's leading, and I think that's why I enjoy that routine. You essentially say, you know, with magic, you could imagine magicians need to set something up secretly without you knowing, right? But today I'm going to set it up in front of you. I want you to see everything. So we're going to take this card and we're going to leave it here. By the end of this routine, you're going to know what that card is. I won't even need to say it. Nobody will. We're going to place one here because yada, yada, yada. I don't want to ruin anything. We're going to place
Yeah,
them.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you set up these things, right? And then you go into a multi-phase kind of effect.
So
That one's
interesting.
really cool. That one's got potential for like if you want to add minimal gaffage, you can get into like closer territory. There's ways to do it impromptu, which is pretty cool. There's a trick called the Ms. Call phenomenon, which is essentially a four of a kind of a named number seems to like appear in their hands. And I say appear because there's a trillion four of a kind effects and ways of getting four of a kinds in spectators' hands. I love four of a kinds, but this one was mostly focused on how do you get it to be so unexpected up until that moment. And there's a couple things that are done to just really make it particularly unexpected by the time you get there. So that's kind of cool. So there's
Sounds
a
awesome.
routine. Yeah, there's a routine here. I have this deck here. I want to shout out my buddy Tony Picasso. This is his 1902 deck.
Yes, I've heard about these.
Yeah, Tony's amazing. We get together at the Magic Apple, and Tony's just like a card savant who has helped me for many, many years, just like structure routines, and he's just a fun guy. Very fun and loves card tricks just as much as me. And we just sit and we explore and we chat and we teach each other stuff. And I say that because one of the routines in the book uses one of his techniques, and he allowed me to share it, which is essentially a way of having the spectator cut four piles, and then you're able to do something to get, let's say, an ace on top of every pile after they cut it. And it's very streamlined and useful. So he showed me that in a Monty routine of his. He has a lot of gambling themed names for the routine, so I won't say the name of the routine because I don't want to get it wrong. But that was interesting because I found a way to do the same thing with the card on the face of where they cut. So the marriage of thoughts with some work, and we worked on it a bit, and we got it to a point where you have a really fun routine where the spectator cuts four piles themselves, and that ends up producing two four of a kinds, right? It's not as direct as cut and there's two four of a kinds. You know, you can imagine you can't really just do it like that, but it's justified in such a way that gets you to that climax. And I think that's a really fun one. And it's just one of those things where these are two techniques put together into a routine. But if somebody reads that and goes, I wouldn't do that, you could still use those two techniques for whatever the hell you want, or just one of them for whatever the hell you want. So I try and add things like that into the book. Now I'm just now I am very happy with this. Okay, guys, I really do love card tricks and Mystic Paper. You should get it.
Yeah, man. I'll leave a link down below in the description.
Thank you.
Go and get it, and get Vital as well. That one.
Heck yeah!
I love it. It's so good. Nice. Well, another thing that you've created is Magic Intel.
Yes.
And from what I understand, Magic Intel is pretty much its own thing. There's not really much else out there like that. Like, it's basically a free membership for magicians on Instagram.
Yep.
So could you explain for people who haven't heard of it what it's about, and also kind of talk about what inspired you to start it in the first place?
Yeah. So inspiration was wanting to share, but also at the time, lockdown. You know what I mean? Everybody's doing these subscriptions, and I was kind of like, it's like so many subscriptions from like people I've never. I'm like, I don't know about this, but whatever. That's neither here nor there. But I was like, what if I just make a private page where I could just share ideas and make it only magicians? Felt like such a simple idea, right? Only magicians, cardists, have them DM the account if they're private, so I could confirm and see that they like cards. And I was like, that's a simple idea, but I don't see why not, you know? The other thing that allows me to do is when we're jamming or when people are jamming, we are at a mutual understanding of like, I could probably describe how I did an entire routine to you in like 30 seconds. Because I would just say, I did this, and then we do one of those, and then here we do one of those, and then right? And you go, oh, sweet. To somebody that knows nothing, maybe they'll be like, that means nothing to me. The nothing was what? That doesn't mean anything. So I kind of like being able to talk in that jam sense, where like I don't need to teach every little slight, right? Because maybe they're not mine to teach. Maybe it's besides the point of the idea I'm showing. And I don't want to, for me, it's just about just literally sharing with the flow of how I would if somebody was there, right? And just kind of being like, oh, here's an idea. We can try something like this. And most people being on the same page with that. So it's just a great way to share ideas myself and have friends share ideas for the community. You get DMs, you're like, oh, I was thinking of this, I had this idea. It just feels nice. Or you see people using stuff they learned on the page.
It's a super cool resource.
It's a nice thing. Plus, I'm going to charge for my magic because I think that's important for the pieces I spend a lot of time on. And if I'm going to charge for my magic, like, I also want to share for the sake of sharing.
Yeah,
Like I
yeah,
think the
yeah,
both are important to me. So
yeah.
yeah,
That's kind of why I have this YouTube channel. Is that exact reason? Like, if I eventually do start publishing stuff, like I'll charge for it. But I also just enjoy talking about it and sharing the stuff. So yeah, I totally get it. Yeah,
hell
it's super
yeah.
cool. Well, let's shift tack a little bit. This is a question I always ask people, and I'm curious to hear what you have to say to it. What topic in magic do you think should be talked about more that isn't talked about enough?
Man, you like stunned me with that question.
Sorry,
Uh,
it's a difficult one.
what topic in magic do I wish was talked about more that I think isn't talked about enough? Is this what?
Yeah, or it could be a topic outside of magic that's relevant to magic. Like I know people in the past have said like script writing or just writing in
Yeah,
general.
I think I have like a really basic B word answer, but it's like I care a lot about the vibe and the body language. So it's almost like it does have to do with the magic and the presentation, but it has a lot to do with just like how we come off to people and how
Yeah,
we move as we speak. Small things. How do we get somebody's attention? How do we ask people to do things? Like the sum of all that is far greater than the parts, you know? These little bits of how we carry ourselves, I think is just as important as like anything we can do.
yeah,
But I do think that's important and piggybacking off that for some more direct advice. The most humbling experiences for me have been watching myself on video. Because I'm like, oh, in my head, I'm king of the castle. Then I look at the video and I'm like, I can never see this video again. I'm like, I can never see it. I'm just like, I
yeah,
can't. But what that does show you is it really does show you how you come off in some regard. And then you start to tweak that, and then you get better at it, and you start looking at some videos, and sometimes you hate it, but sometimes you're like, yes, that's kind of nice. You're like, good job,
yeah,
Franco. That was smooth. So definitely body language is everything. People sense tension and they sense. I think it's really important to come off as agendaless, which is really hard for me to pinpoint because I've said that to people and I understand that it's not such a direct thought, but like for instance, if I'm a mind reader and I'm playing really heavy into that, it might come off as like I have this agenda to convince people that I could read minds.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I want them to think I don't, just an agendaless guy that
Just to have
magic
fun and
follows this.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But it's a good question. I
Those are
wish I
great
had a
ones.
better response, but yeah.
No, that's okay. That's a great response. Yeah, I think also like what people do, like kind of talking about body language, etc., and even from a sleight of hand perspective, looking at how not just the hand movements, but also what are your elbows doing and your shoulders, and are you looking down, are you looking up? All this stuff is like super important, but it's easy to
So
miss straight away.
yeah,
Yeah,
definitely,
yeah,
definitely. Even listening, like sometimes a magician will speak in a way that makes it seem like they weren't fully listening. They were waiting to say their next thing.
yeah,
And it's
yeah,
very bad to do that. But I also understand that sometimes you literally have to keep the show moving and going forward, right? So if I'm doing street magic, the number one rule is you never interrupt their reaction. You let them live with that. It's very important. Of course, you can't always do that in a close-up show, right? You
yeah,
can't always do
exactly.
that. So, yeah,
Yeah, being in the moment and being present to what you need to say and what you need to move on from. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Well, we're kind of getting near the end of my list of questions, but
All
one thing I'm
right.
interested in, as someone who does magic full time and has done it for a while, what are the stuff that you really love about magic being your job, and what is the stuff that you don't love so much about that fact, if there is any?
I love more. The only thing I don't love about it is, yeah, it's like sometimes very hard work. It's like fuck, like I gotta find work, I gotta do this to like keep the ball rolling. It's very grueling on that end. So that might be the only thing I dislike. Everything else, I feel like that's the thing I'm best at, the thing I love the most and understand the most. So there's just a lot to love there. I like that when I create something in magic, it will see itself in the world. And knowing that gives you a certain confidence and a certain makes you want to keep doing it. That
Yeah.
it's not just all going into nothingness. It's like actually going to be applied in some way, hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think it's also that, like, I don't know, I was talking to you and I about this at Blackpool, and
Mm.
I was talking about some of my struggles with, like, doing, like, gigs that I don't really love doing. He was like, just do it more, slowly raise the price, and soon you realize that you're doing what you love, but you're getting paid to do it for a living. And I was like, oh, that resonated so much with me. I was like, ah, oh, so true.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is true. I had a gig, somebody was like, it's my son's 12th birthday or something like this. And I
Yeah.
was just kind of like, I'm so sorry, like I don't really do this type of thing. And then she was persistent. She's like, what's your rate? Like, we want you there. So then I like, I gave her the rate. And if they say yes to the rate, I'm there. I don't care if it's 5 years old or whatever, right? So
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I'm there. He's like, oh, he loves magic. He watches your stuff. And I'm like, okay, okay, now I got to do it, right? But that day
Yeah.
I pulled up into a house and it was a bunch of insane kids and they were absolutely loving it, but they were also doing shit like, for instance, I didn't do any invisible thread work. There nothing seemed like it was moving on it, nothing. And this kid is going, there's invisible thread in his sleeve, and he's like grabbing my sleeve and go like there's nothing in my sleeve, just like complete chaos, right? But sometimes even those moments are fun. What was cool about that event is they had cards hanging from the ceiling, like card ornaments. So when I pulled up to the house, there was a giant trail of cards. Clearly, the kid liked cards. And I go in the room, and now hanging from the ceiling is strings with a bunch of different cards. So when I'm getting into my stack routines, I'm going to the kids, and I say, "Look at the roof. Which one of these cards do you like? Name it out loud, right?" And then I'm just having them call
So
them from
good.
the roof, and it was fun. But yeah, that's maybe a situation where I wouldn't love to be there, but once I was there, I was like, this is fun. We're having a good time.
Yeah. 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 That's super cool. Nice. Well, let's go into some of the closing questions I have. Here's the first one. What is your biggest pet peeve in Magic?
I don't know. Maybe I have too many. In a general sense, things that show people don't care about like magic, like in the deep sense, will probably piss me off because I'm such a like, I just love it so much that sometimes I come across people and I'm like, man, he doesn't care as much about magic as I do. And that manifests itself in interesting ways, right on their end. And maybe I'll perceive this and be like, I'd hate that.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like you show someone something, they're like, oh well, this works in the real world, and you're like, okay, well,
Yeah.
I'll step back then. So, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, if you could go out for dinner with any magician who has ever lived, who would it be? And there's no language barriers or anything like that.
Hofstadter.
That is the exact same answer as Antonio.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he went straight
Yeah.
Hofstadter straight away.
Oh, that's funny. Shit. Yeah, it's just a good answer, I think.
It is a good answer. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
he was before his time.
Yeah. Because I'm such a castle guy, honestly, Vernon, that would be beautiful. Just for the history and just knowing, I'm in that place a lot and that would be cool.
Yeah, that is
Yeah.
cool.
Or like Del Rey. I really like Del Rey. Del
Oh
Rey
yeah,
is just
beautiful,
like,
beautiful stuff.
I wonder what it'd be like to be in that guy's magic workshop. Just like, what's going on in there,
Yeah.
But
Those are
yeah.
great answers. Yeah, that's sweet. Okay, well, final question. If you could only read 3 magic books for the rest of your life, what would they be? Now, this is like, imagine you have already read what you've already read, but going forward, you can only read 3. What are they?
I genuinely don't have an answer, but I'm certain it would be 3 theory books that I just happen to be amazing, because if it's only 3, it can't just be effects.
Yep. Yeah, I agree.
But I'm not even sure.
Yeah, that's
I'm
fine.
not
That's
even
fine.
sure.
These are very, very broad, weird questions, so don't worry about that. Cool. Well, Franco, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on, man.
Caleb, you rock.
You rock harder. So thank you, man. And for everyone who's watching, go check out Franco's stuff. It's all down below.
Yes.
Yeah, go have a look at Mystic Paper and then tell them how much you love it.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming on, and we will jam more in the future.
Yes, please.
Well, you made it to the end of this conversation. Congratulations. If you did enjoy it, I've left a playlist down below in the description with all of the other conversations I've done. I have new ones coming out every 2 weeks, and it's just been the most fun series ever to film, so I hope you enjoy it as much as I have. And for those of you who have stuck around to the end, I'll leave a little treat. I'll give you a little hint for what is coming in 2 weeks' time for the next guest. He is one of my favourite guys out there. He's a really good friend of mine, and also the best magician I've ever met. With the business side of magic, which is something, if you want to do magic professionally or semi-professionally, is just of crucial importance. I really struggle with the skill set, but he is a master. So I won't give anything else away, but I really hope you enjoy that episode, which is coming in 2 weeks' time. But yeah, thanks for watching this video, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.